spoke, I guess it was about a year ago. And I thought, well, I can do my main talk, which is creating your goals as it relates to the strategies to use to build your speaking business. And I thought, no, what I'd like to speak to you today about is the power of your origin story. Because people want to know what qualifies you and what motivates you to speak on your subject. And how do I do it?
Just enter.
Okay. So, I struggled with my origin story, but people within NSA Georgia helped me to share it. And so I would like to share that story and then talk a little bit about how it was structured. So when I speak, I typically speak on work-life balance wisdom. I just did this program last week at Georgia Power. So I get introduced, and then black screen.
Good.
If you have goals on your list that you say are important to you, especially when it comes to work-life balance, but you never achieve them, you may be suffering from TAT syndrome. Ever hear of it? Probably not, because I made it up. TAT stands for There's Always Tomorrow. And although the syndrome is fake, the problem is real. And it could be keeping you from a life you love. So many people think they have plenty of time to finally focus on what really matters. But we know that's just not true. So why does it usually take a life-altering event, like a death, a divorce, or a diagnosis, before we stop living passively? Imagine you're enjoying a rewarding career, in a loving relationship, and about to celebrate a milestone anniversary with a long weekend getaway. The night before you depart, your loved one dies in their sleep. How does that affect your perspective on time? Now imagine a few days later, as you're dealing with this new reality, you find their to-do list of unrealized goals and dreams. On October 20th, 1997, at 3:30 in the morning, I lost my husband to a heart attack. Barry Chase was a popular Atlanta radio personality. At the time of his death, we had 3-year-old twins. We're about to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary at a charming bed and breakfast in Charleston. Barry had accomplished much in his life, but he planned to do so much more. A few days after his death, I found his to-do list pushed aside on the kitchen counter during all the commotion of family and friends stopping by with condolences and casseroles. I remember looking down at that list and taking a deep breath and realizing, probably for the first time, just how finite and fragile life is. None of us is guaranteed tomorrow. And I had to admit, I'd been wasting a lot of time and energy on things that just didn't matter. So it was at that moment that I vowed to myself that I would not take one more day for granted, that I would live each day fully and without regret for myself, for our children, and in honor of Barry. So much of what I've accomplished since then I attribute to that defining moment and the strategies I will share with you today. My story of loss is not unique. We all have our challenges. But when it comes to the goals that you say are important to you, you can wait until all the stars align, until you have more time or more money, or until someone else gives you permission, or you can do what I did and go from list maker to action taker. So what's on your list? Let's get started.
Wow.
So now I'd like to explain to you how I bring the audience up before we go through the strategies and all of that. So I say, now if you're anything like me, when anyone tries to give you some advice to improve your circumstances, you might secretly wonder if they walk their talk. So to take a step toward earning your trust, I'd like to give you a little window into my world. I'd like to share with you some of the strategies that have worked for me, so you can see how they might work for you. Would that be okay?
Sure. Sure. Mm-hmm.
So when I think about who I am, I always start with that I'm the mom of twins, Connor and Allison. Now this picture wasn't taken that long ago. They haven't changed that much, except instead of Allison having that chocolate ice cream goatee, now Connor is the one with the goatee. This picture was taken a few years ago, and they both graduated in 3.5 years with honors from the University of Georgia. Any dogs here?
Nice.
So I've used these strategies to parent them and to also show them how they can achieve their goals. Allison was valedictorian of her high school. When a friend of mine heard that, she said, make sure you get it on her resume. I said, her resume? My resume?
Yeah, that's right.
My mother, a valedictorian. Sticking with the theme of twos, I have 2 businesses. I have a marketing firm that I started when I was a mere child 30 years ago. And then I used these strategies to write my book, and that's when I started my speaking, training, and consulting business. Oh yeah, that's Lori Kay's photo. I have 2 homes. One is in East Cobb, and the other is in Gulf Shores, Alabama. When I decided to write my book, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could write my book at a beach home? So I got my whole family involved. We set an intention, we created a vision board, and in a few months we found the perfect for us home in Gulf Shores. It's not a big home, it's not directly on the water, but it's pretty darn close. It's the home that I go to rest and to recharge and to write. I call it my LA office, Lower Alabama, that is. I have 2 dogs, Lucy and Bella. They remind me to play a little every day. And I've also used these strategies to find love again. Rick and I have been married for 18 years. And a few years ago, we welcomed a new member of the family, Caleb, Allison's husband. So, 2 dogs, 2 houses, 2 jobs, 2 kids. For some of you, that might be too much. So now it's time to figure out what your life looks like when you start to enjoy better balance. And that's it, and then I go into the program from there.
Excellent. I like that. And that was a 7.5 minute introduction, right? About 7.5 minutes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Typically, that starts out my hour to an hour and a half program on work-life balance.
Okay.
So, a couple of years ago, I had a coach that said, you know, why do you do what you do? Why are you so passionate about this subject? And so I told her a little bit about my background, and she kept pulling more and more and more out of me. And she said, you really need to tell that story because people need to hear that. It's a wake-up call for people, and you can do it in a way that is effective and comfortable and all that. And so for about a year, I struggled for that effective and comfortable. I was uncomfortable sharing it. The audience sometimes, I could tell, was kind of squirming in their seats as I was explaining it. And I never wanted it to come across like I was capitalizing on a horrible loss. And so I struggled with it. And I belong to a mastermind group, so 3 guys and me, Ryan Jenkins, Bronkar Lee, and Des Thornton, and we've been meeting for, gosh, about 2 years now. So one of my challenges with them was to try to figure out how to do this better. So they all gave me some good feedback, and then Des, who is an expert on presentation skills, he asked me to send him my script, and he dissected it, and he created, he put it in a certain structure, and the main point was, he said, we want to make sure that when you're presenting this story, it's more about your audience than it is about you. We want to put your audience in your shoes before they realize that those are your shoes. And that's the difference. That's what makes it work. And so that's how I came to the structure that it is now. So, you know, if you have any comments or questions about it as you think about perhaps your own story and how you might be able to do that.
Can I ask you, when you're telling the story, you seem so reserved and so removed from the story. It's kind of like you're reading it out of a book.
Hmm.
Is that done, well, you just said, so that means that is it, because I was wondering if you did it on purpose, like in that way of.
Very intentional.
Very intentional.
Well, I guess
Or
I'm
you
respectful of the audience and what I'm sharing, and I also have to kind of control the emotion that I would feel.
Why? Why do you have to control it?
So I can get through it?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get through it?
Yeah.
Yeah. First couple of times before I had the structure right, I lost it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, my sense wasn't that it was an unfeeling way of telling the story.
Okay.
That I didn't get that at all, so to have another opinion.
We're not giving feedback on you, right? You're just talking
No,
about how to
please
get
don't
to
give me
us.
feedback.
Yeah, she's like, no, I've got it.
was
No,
just-
this is an
I was
opportunity to
curious.
ask questions.
Okay,
So-
because this is about the power of your origin story.
Yeah, this is, so my intention here today is to share with you what my origin story is and
Okay.
the origin of it, how we figured it out, to see if that resonated with any of you in terms of your, either if you have an origin story and you're telling it, you need help in, or you hadn't even thought about doing it. Because I know, like I said at the beginning, is people pay more attention when they know what motivates and qualifies you to share your message.
So I have a question. Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay, so, one of the toughest things about origin stories is that they seem very self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you keep it from being self-serving?
By putting them in my place before they see that they're in my place.
So imagine if.
So imagine if
Okay.
is a big piece.
Got it.
Imagine if is a big piece of it. You know, how would you feel? How does that affect your perspective on time?
Right.
There's certain phrases, and then even when I get to the second half of it, and I say, because I said to Des when I was saying, okay, the second half, after he helped me with the first half, I said, now the second half, I'm having some concerns with it because I don't want it to look like I'm bragging. And he said, okay, so what you want to do is you want to ask their permission for you to share about what your life is like now. So that's what I said, would that help? And all of you said yes, so that you gave me permission. Another piece that I changed recently is I used to just say that I had a beach home and I used the LA office piece. And so then one of my other friends said, what if you were to explain that it's not a big house and it's not right on the water, which is true, you know? So again, it can help them relate more to me than if I was, talking
Yeah.
about some kind of mansion
Yeah,
on the
that's
beach. So little pieces like that I change. Sometimes when I talk about my kids, I say I use these strategies to help raise them through all the ups and downs. So people are like not thinking I've got these superhuman kids or whatever, so they relate to that a little bit more. So those little tweaks there that I'm showing them what they can accomplish, but making sure that they know that it's not with that, it is within their reach. Yeah, yeah.
Who's the audience usually?
Corporate. Mm-hmm.
Did you were you working full time when you were raising? It struck me as a working mom currently, like
Yeah.
in the thick of it, that it seemed it didn't come across that you were a working mom, and so talking about work-life balance, it's like, oh, it's hard when your story is, oh, here are my kids, when I feel like as a working mom, like, oh, there's so many things that I would talk about in my origin story.
Yeah.
But it's hard to hear about work-life balance and I could totally be misreading it, and maybe you were working a ton of hours. But
Well, I had two businesses, the marketing business and then my speaking business, yeah. Well, at the time, it was just the marketing business. So, yeah, I was working.
I was just curious because I was like, oh, this is, when you're telling it, then it could just be me being a crazy person right now. But that is one of the things that, we run up against in
Yes.
work-life balance is like moms who are bringing in a big part of the income, and then like to have so much focus on, well, oh, if that's on my resume, it's like, well, there's so many things that we have to do that struck me as, I don't know. I don't know that it's wrong. I don't even know.
So did it not come across that I was working when?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was like, oh, this is what I did, and then I had these side businesses. But if you're in a corporate environment where women are working 10 hours a week and like barely racing to pick
which
their
was
kids
certainly
up,
not the case for
and
you.
barely
right?
racing. So then I was like, it's hard to come at working moms with that message of, oh, you have to be this great mom and raise your valedictorian, and like obviously then find a work-life balance. It's like we're just keeping it together.
Yeah.
You know, like we're just
Yeah.
hanging on by a thin thread.
Yeah.
And so that, if it's in a corporate environment, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I'm the only person who ever gave you that advice, then feel free to ignore it.
Well, I certainly didn't have I got to set my own rules as my own business owner, so I didn't have that restraints that
Right.
I would have had if I worked in corporate. Mhm. Yeah, you're right.
Is that something that you have to address? Because I'm kind of in that situation too,
Mm-hmm.
where I want my audience to be working moms,
Yes.
wanting to balance being happy and productive at the same time.
Yes.
And I haven't been in corporate America, since I've been a mom.
Yeah.
So I left that. So I wonder about that very thing.
Well, it's
Does that make me not, does it make you not a expert when you're speaking not in that, that same realm?
Well,
Yeah.
the reality is small business, if you're running a small business,
You're always working.
you're working
Yeah.
way more hours
And
than
that's
you
what I'm
were
like,
pulling a 9
she's
to
an
5.
entrepreneur, for goodness
Yeah.
sakes, like, she's not serving corporate America, she has to drive out all of her business.
But
That's
this,
even
but
more
this is a
pressure.
trend in America. The mommy wars are very powerful, right? Like this
Yeah.
is a huge thing that working women struggle with, and so that you want to. And I run my own business as well now, but like all of my friends, like we're just in the thick of it, and we don't have the perspective of, oh, my lovely children, look how well they came out. It's just like,
Yeah.
are their socks
Are they
matching?
alive?
Get them out the door. Like,
Yeah,
do
right.
they get the?
Yeah, are they alive?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just like if your origin story is to like say, hey, we're gonna connect, then I just might think about that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure too, because we don't have a ton of time while we have Tricia here, so this is an opportunity to ask someone who's really successful in the speaking industry some questions about what you can model or what she has done that has been successful, and it's really not necessarily about the work-life balance speech as it is about kind of how you have managed your career as a speaker and an author, right? So, because that has been many years,
questions?
right?
Well, how do you get your corporate talks? How have you developed it?
Networking within organizations that, where the members are those who could hire me.
So what are those organizations?
So like one group that I'm very involved with is called the Network of Executive Women. And they have an Atlanta region, they have about 21 regions around the country, and I've spoken at their leadership summits and then also some of their regions, and I'm involved with in leadership of the local region, and their members are primarily consumer product goods and retailers, so that's one piece. I do a good deal of pro bono talks for nonprofit organizations, and then that often leads to paid programs with either those audience members or their boards, that type of thing. I'm learning to ask a lot more for the business, and who do you know, and who can you connect me with, and all of that. I mentioned to Christy, I just came from a meeting at Comcast, and this is a woman that heard me speak 2 years ago. She's the head of HR there. And we kept in touch on social media, mostly Twitter, which I'm not that active in, but she kept commenting on my work-life balance posts. And then I thought, how silly. Just get in touch with her and say, you want to talk about it? She's like, sure, come on down. So, just I'm finding that the more you're confident in the value of your message, the more you're going to be able to ask and ask again and ask again. And a lot of times it has to do with timing, and not to feel like just because they turned you down that they turned you down. It's just that the timing wasn't right. So to be able to keep in touch with those people. So from when I put on my marketing hat, a couple of things that have been very important to me is to have a good video, a good video reel, and then also I write testimonial quotes for my clients for my marketing business. And so testimonials or references, written references, are powerful that you can point people to, especially if it's in their same industry or whatever. And so I almost never, almost every time that I do a speech, we have a debriefing about a week after that. What did you like, what worked, what resonated, that kind of thing. And then I take that information and I craft a quote for their approval. And that's just part of the cycle that I do. And that gets them in that debriefing. In addition, for me getting the information I need to write the quote, it gives me the information I need to perhaps make some changes in the program, what didn't come across right, it was confusing, or whatever it might be, what was very powerful to them, so I can make sure I focus on that next time. But also too, it's like, so who else do you know that could benefit from this? And I really appreciate an introduction. So that's part of the marketing process.
Is that typical to have the debriefing after you've spoken to an organization?
It's typical for me. Hopefully it's for you.
Okay, I just wondered if that's something people would expect, or you're kind of initiating that?
I initiate it, because it doesn't close, you know.
It's probably a
circle.
differentiator for you too.
I do,
I
yes.
bet a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
I always customize my program, so I'm interviewing a few of their leaders on the front end to share some of their stories in my program. So the leaders get to know me a little bit, and then when I finish up there, they feel like I kind of took care of them from beginning to end. And that just helps you become more memorable.
Excuse me, how long do you spend with their leaders? Like, what would be a typical meet time with them?
About 15 minutes on the phone.
Okay, great, yeah.
Typically 2 to 4 people. When I did the Georgia Power, we did 4. 2 of them said, yeah, I was able to find a story. They said, yeah, you can share that story, but you share it, I don't want to share it. The other 2 said, just call me up and I'll tell my story. In fact, quick story on that. One of them was a really sharp young man who learned about meditation recently that helped him deal with the stress of being in charge of a call center for Georgia Power. He said, I would have 2 bad calls out of 100. Those are the 2 calls I took home with me that affected my family life. Then I learned meditation, and now I'm a different person. My wife says I'm so much nicer. I can leave the stress at work. And so he wanted to share that story. And so he did a great job, and then at the end he was showing me his little worksheet, and I have a place where I ask people to come up with their bodacious big dream goal as it relates to if I had more better balance, and he points to it and it said motivational speaker.
Oh.
And I said, you need to come with me to NSA. And
Yes.
so he's going to be there on Saturday.
Nice,
Derek.
yay!
Yeah, really nice young man.
Great.
So, yes.
Can I ask a practical question?
Yes.
I was in a conversation recently where they're like, yeah, great HR, but HR does not have the kind of budget that sales and marketing do when it
Yes.
comes into bringing these speakers.
Yes.
Is there a strategy that you use to target, to make your message relevant for sales and marketing to make sure that you're getting compensated at the best level possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. And you're right, sales is often the better place to come through than HR. Or if it's a large enough organization, sometimes they have a leadership development department, but sales makes sense. So like when I do my Crave Your Goals program, I can do Crave Your Sales Goals and focus on the sales process. As long as you can figure out a way that your message will help them to sell more, the basic idea is whatever your message is, the way that people will pay for it is if it can help them save or make money. Simple as that. So you always want to get down to that basic thing. And so that's why sales is often very interested, because if you can make that
More profitable.
yeah, and if you can make that point, get that point across, then you're going to get their attention.
Yeah, and that's a salient point for even working outside of the corporate space too.
Yes.
You know, if you're going to save or make more money, relationships, and health. Those are the 3 key elements, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything
How long
else?
did it take you to find your sweet spot, like find that message? How long did it take you to craft
Well, so when I wrote, I wrote my book, and my book is called Working with Wisdom, and my subtitle is 10 Universal Principles for Enlightened Entrepreneurs. Because being an entrepreneur, I made the wrong assumption that my audience would be primarily business owners, small business owners, entrepreneurs. And then, I realized that they didn't have a budget to pay me. You know, I could go and I'd speak at entrepreneurial groups, but, you know, small business owners didn't have the capacity for that. So, probably only took me about a year or so, well, less than that, to start working with corporate, because one of my first corporate clients was Home Depot. Simply because I spoke at a professional association, somebody there who was a vendor for Home Depot sponsored me to speak at their women's group, and then that led to corporate work. And then it was like, oh, I see, that's who can pay me, is the corporate. I was doing mostly Achieving Goals, the Crave Your Goals program. And then probably about 8 years ago, I got a call out of the blue from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, which is a conservative organization that I would never naturally approach. They found me on LinkedIn, saw that within my copy I mentioned work-life balance, but I was really never even promoting that. And they said, can you do a work-life balance program? And I said, sure. And then I took Crave, and I made it into work-life balance, and then it's kind of progressed over the years. But that was the first time. And as soon as I was asked to do it, and I started playing with it, I thought, that's much more powerful than the achieving of goals. Achieving goals is a little too generic, but there's something about work-life balance that people love to confess that they are out of balance. It's like almost this badge of honor. So there's like, oh my gosh, yeah, you talk about balance, we need you to come in here. More so than, oh, you talk about achieving goals, we need you to come in here. It's more of an emotional thing, and people respond to that. So that's been, so my focus on work-life balance has been probably in the last 5 years. And then in addition to those two programs, I also facilitate vision board workshops, which tie into getting goals clear and work-life balance.
Can I?
Yeah.
So you're a marketing person, and now you just said, I never marketed for work-life balance, but it just happened to be stuck somewhere in the contents of some paragraph in LinkedIn. So talk about that. Like, how does that happen? Like,
Well, I guess
Right, like
in my
what is
profile
that?
copy,
yeah?
you know, in the summary, I probably had that as one of the things that this relates to, that this supports work-life balance, reducing stress, achieving goals, improving work-life balance, but I didn't put much credence in that as being the focus until I got that call. Yeah, so a big piece that I've learned over the years is listen to what your prospects are saying to you and asking, do you do this, do you do that? Oh, that little piece is very interesting, can you expand on that? Because it's so easy for us to go, this is what I do, this is what I don't do. Oh, I do that, but just a little bit. When somebody says, can you expand? We'd love to learn more about that. I sure can, and I'll have your program ready in a week. So, yeah.
Because, you know, we've been hearing about getting really defined.
Yes,
About
create
what
that
it is
niche.
that you do. And then when I hear that, it's like, you know, it kind of goes the other way.
But it was part of what she talks about. It already was a part of it.
Yeah, I think that's my niche. I'm an expert on developing a more positive mindset to reduce stress, to achieve goals, and to improve work-life balance. That's my pitch. So the work-life balance is a niche. It
Oh,
narrows
it's one
it.
of those aspects.
Well,
Okay,
and-
that's how they picked up on it.
How long have you been speaking?
How many years?
So what, 13 years now?
Okay.
Professionally.
So there's a difference, much like a small business owner, right? If you're starting a business, in that first 1 to 3 years, you have to be really focused because your language isn't developed. People don't know how to talk about you. You don't know how to go out. You either cast this wide net and get a handful of things because a lot of things fall through the gaps, or you focus really tightly so that you can go and find the people you know are going to hire you. Once you've developed 13 years worth of experience, then people are like, hey, I know she's a fabulous presenter and workshop leader. and she will build something custom. So I'm gonna call and find out. If she doesn't do it, she'll tell me somebody that does, right? So I think you earn the right after you've been focused and you've developed a following, or, you know, at least a reputation, to then go wider. So,
Great.
Thank you.
And certainly, please, you know, email me, let me know what you do best at, just to see if I might be able to point you in the right direction, or even refer you to people that I know, so.
yes, well, I just want to say a big thank you so much.